What's happening, ladies and gents? Welcome to another episode of the Ready for Anything podcast. Today, we're joined by a very special guest, Sean Conway. So, Sean is actually the world record holder of the most consecutive Ironmans done back to back. He's done 105 iron distance triathlons in 105 consecutive days, which is absolutely insane. So, that's a 3.8k swim into a 180-kilometer bike into a 42-kilometer run, which is a full marathon to finish off the day. He's done that every single day for 105 days. Insane. Anyway, we dive into Sean's life, his story, what got him to the point of taking on this insane challenge, what makes him tick, so many lessons, the challenges, the dark moments, the things that weren't really expected, and a lot of other things as well. Like Sean's a writer, he's got 6 books that he's written, he's done a TED talk, he's done a lot, he's got multiple world records, he's cycled across the world, like he's done all sorts of insane stuff. So he's an amazing athlete, an amazing endurance athlete, an amazing adventurer, and just an all-round great guy. So please enjoy the episode. I was pretty blown away even just by looking at some of the stats on your website there, like 3 documentaries on Amazon. You've written 6 books, multiple world records, but the one that really blew me away is that you've done a TED talk. Like I love a TED talk. But and then also I was just discussing with you right before about I was actually looking up where you're actually from, and I seen that I've just discussed with you there. You've got 4 passports, but you're actually from Zimbabwe, where you're actually Irish. You said. So,
Yeah, it's complicated. When someone says, "Oh, so where are you from?" I'm like, it depends what mood I'm in. Also depends who's winning in the rugby.
yeah,
So yeah, because born in Zimbabwe, grew up in South Africa. I'm Irish. I have an Irish passport because of Irish family, and then I live in Wales. So I have 3 rugby teams to support: South Africa, Wales, and Ireland. So yeah, that's a tough one during the World Cup.
yeah. What was it like growing up in Zimbabwe?
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was incredible. But it wasn't incredible for everyone. It was just incredible for me personally because my dad is a game ranger, wildlife conservationist. So I grew up in the middle of some big nature game reserves, yeah, national parks, Mana Pools, Charissa, Wanky. Yeah, just living the bush life, chasing elephants out the garden, no electricity. Well, we had electricity, but a couple of hours a day, or from a generator. So yeah, I mean, I always joke actually that I've sort of lived human evolution in my lifetime because I didn't go quite from caveman in a cave, but our life was pretty rustic in Africa, and now I've come all the way through the other end where it's implement AI and everything. So yeah, no, I'm glad. I think, I mean, it must have fueled something in my life. I can't imagine like that upbringing wouldn't have affected me in the way it has, I guess. So yeah, it was amazing. I wouldn't change for anything. And the downside now is I'm trying to somehow replicate that life for my kids, and it's just never going to happen. Even if I was in Zimbabwe now, it wouldn't be the same. So yeah, I feel like I lived a very unique childhood that probably no one lives now, almost
yeah,
certainly no one, because of technology, really. So I was in that generation where there wasn't technology around as a kid, but on top of that, I was also in the middle of the bush.
yeah.
So yeah, that was incredible. And yeah, as I said, I'm writing a book about it at the moment about those years in Africa. And every time I write, I'm like, damn it, my kids are never going to have this, and I'm trying to work out how I could get close to it, But yeah, it's just one of those things. Now, world goes on, you can't fight it really. You can't fight progression, I guess.
I was having this conversation with Dan Reed that I had on the podcast yesterday, and it's funny because at that moment in your life, you think it's the be all and end all, and then before you know it, you're on to another chapter where you think that's the be all and end all, and then you're on to another chapter. Then you talk about your life in these different stages, and sadly, my life hasn't been between Zimbabwe and I've traveled a lot in my as I've got older, but it's just crazy, isn't it? That I think it's just the lesson in that is you just need to appreciate where you're at and what season of life you're in and what's happening in that given moment because you genuinely don't know what's around the corner. Like had this conversation with a client recently that was basically telling me about like stuff going on in their life, and they were making a lot of change. And I said, it's funny because this point in your life is going to be such a minute thing when you tell this to your grandchildren when you're like 60. Like it's going to be like, yeah, that's that time when I done that thing. But like at that moment, it's everything. Do you know
I
what I mean?
know.
Like it's
Yeah.
absolutely everything. And it's been able
Yeah,
to,
totally. Yeah, I know what you mean. And I have it now where people have forgotten I cycled. I've forgotten I cycled around the world sometimes. So, people are like, oh, you cycled around. Where did you go? What countries did you go to? And I have to sit down and go, well, okay, well, like, especially the European leg where there was, multiple countries in a day off sometimes. I'm like, well, I think I definitely went to Kosovo, but I genuinely can't tell you anything about Kosovo. But I remember at the time being amazed by being in Kosovo. Every now and then I have to go back and read the book, my book about it. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. So you're right. Memories. I have a terrible, terrible memory as well, unfortunately. So I'd have to write things down, which is why I've got the books. So if I don't write them down, then I'll just forget them really. And also I'm so tired because I'm trying to break records, so it's a lot
yeah.
of sleep deprivation and a lot of real focused energy into trying to break a record, that the sort of sightseeing stuff often gets forgotten within a few months really.
Yeah, there
So
is. I had this conversation recently as well about when it comes to like we are the best when it comes to endurance. Human beings are like this. That's what we became the best at, to endure. And I think now why it's so impressive, we'll come on and talk about that. Like some of the challenges you've done. Like I think these stage challenges are like insane. Like you obviously get a lot of people now that are doing things in one go. These are things that are in one go, but they're just consecutive back to back, and they require like so much focus. But one of the biggest things, like when I talk to anyone, even a client, and they're thinking about doing something pretty big, they're maybe thinking about doing like their first marathon, and it's huge. If you've never done something like that before, the body's just so not used to it. But then you kind of go a bit bigger, and someone's like, I want to do like a staged ultra marathon. I want to do like back to back days. I want to do an Ironman, and it's not even the actual challenge itself is obviously very very hard, but like the thing that I say to people is like this is like it's a quest. It's an
yeah.
adventure. This isn't. It's like you're going to be tired all the time. You're going to be fatigued all the time. Have you just kind of normalized that now because you've done this stuff for so long, the sort of fatigue and tiredness, because it's part of who you are and what you do?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I would much rather go and run the length of Britain than run a fast marathon. Like,
Yeah.
I'd much rather do
Yeah.
that. So yeah, it's just what you used to and what you sort of get good at, I guess. In the world of endurance, there's sort of what I call, like three categories of things. You know, there's things that you do where there's no sleep involved. So depending how fast you are and how short the race is, but anything up to 100 mile run, I guess, is in what I call sort of your first category of ultras. Then the second category of ultras is where it's multi-day and you might have some sleep, but it's probably up to about 5 days, I would say, or maybe a week. Um, that's your middle category, where you've got to think about some sleep, but you can sort of empty the tank from day one because
Mhm.
it's only a week long. And then there's the third category, which is the stuff that's usually over a week, weeks, months type thing. And that's the stuff I'm interested in because I just like long. I just like to go long, really. And I wish it wasn't. I wish I could get satisfaction from a park run, but I don't, unfortunately. So yeah, and then there's that, because then there's a whole. Not only are you've got the sleep to think about, you've also got just the general logistics. You can't be going into the red too much because you're just fatigued too much, and then you'll go too slow, and then you'll be out. So um yeah, they're all different. They're equally hard. I could never. Some of the best sort of backyard ultra runners in the world struggle to do a sub like 4 hour marathon.
Yeah.
And these are people who do. What's the backyard ultra record now? It's 400. Is it
Yeah.
400 miles or something stupid?
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name. It was, I think it's like it's ridiculous. It's absolutely
Yeah,
insane.
and I know he struggles to do a sub 4 marathon. So they're all very different, and equally difficult. You know, it's not like one's more difficult than the other. They're just different types of difficult. It's just where you choose
Yeah.
your pain, really.
Yeah. What's really interesting about endurance as well, it's like one of the only sport, that is the only sport where you find a nice variety of men and women at the top. Whereas like in a lot of sports, you obviously, if you separate those categories, there might be like, just because the way that we're built, the way that we're made up, but it's so interesting to see how women adapt to this stuff as well. Like my partner has like only been running for 2 years, Sean, and she's like an incredible runner. And like her endurance, her efficiency, how she runs, and she obviously has a background in sport and stuff when she was younger, but it's pretty impressive to see, especially when it comes to endurance and how they're able to actually do that, and like how their biology affects it as well. Have you noticed a lot of that in like your world of endurance as well, like or like anything that you've been involved in?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've looked at all the data on the stuff I've done that takes usually days and weeks, and there's no biological benefit to being a male, really. So the biggest difference between men and women, when it comes to sport, is usually power. So anything that requires more strength and power, males will biologically just be better. Like it's most boys from the age of 12 can sort of do a pull-up on their own, just do pull-ups. Whereas much more difficult for women to do
Yeah.
that. And then that's why things in like tennis, I think the top 50, the 50th ranked man will possibly, I think used to be the case, the 50th ranked man could beat number one female, just because it's just a pure power thing.
Yeah.
There is a slight hand-eye coordination thing as well, apparently, with men as well. However, the longer you go, you don't need that power.
Yeah.
So the people, so Lael Wilcox, for example, she won the Trans Am, the cycling race across America, self-supported,
Mm.
outright. She beat all the men, and because the power, you only needed to push 110 watts, which is fine. Men and women can push 110 watts consistently, really, over a long period of time. So that's why it's great. Yeah, in the world of endurance, you see all these things. Talking about Lael, she's just about to break the round the world cycling record, which she's taking off fellow Scot Jenny Graham.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's brilliant. And when I did my Ironmans, I looked at the data for my 105 Ironmans, and I think a woman could get the overall full Iron triathlon record just by looking at the data. If hour and a half swim, pretty doable, man and woman. On the bike, you're pushing 120 watts, 130 watts average. That's totally doable. And
Yeah.
then a 6 hour marathon, or between 5 and 6 hour marathon, totally doable. So anyway, putting that out there, if there's a woman who wants to get the full iron record, please get in touch. I'd love to help.
Yeah. Well, no, it's interesting just to see how like the crossover is there with that, but it makes a lot of sense, man, with the power, as you said, like it's being able to generate that force and maybe sports or different things that are a shorter distance or they're explosive, like there is going to be that superiority, but it's amazing to see that it's that sort of the one sport that like is equal at that sort of distance. It's really cool. So like I was kind of looking back at your stuff, Sean, and like the furthest point I kind of go back to, I seen that in 2008 you done Land's End to John O'Groats. Is that where your sort of journey of like endurance kind of began, or like where did it begin for you?
So that was the first thing that I had done that had taken more than sort of 3 days, I
Yeah.
think, from a sporting point of view and from just a general going out and doing something. Well, no, that's a lie. I did some hiking. If you take hiking out the equation, so like I did a bit of hiking in the Himalayas and stuff like that. But really nothing with a sporting element to it, or with a real something that required a little bit of physical endurance that lasted a month. So it took me 25 days to cycle Land's End roads, which is a joke in itself, but that's a different story how slow I was. But no, yeah, that sort of, I got the bug for it, really. And I remember finishing that ride. I got home and I was like, bloody love this. This is the best thing I've ever done. I'm going to cycle every day for the rest of my life. And, you know, I did. I put my bike in my shed and didn't look at it again for like another 2 years or something. So, because, you know, like I just got caught up with life and trying to earn a wage and put food on the table and just that sort of thing. So, yeah, it fueled the fire, but the fire went out. And then it was years later when I gave up the photography that it was a point for me to look back on and go, Sean, when did you last feel fulfilled? When did you last feel motivated? I hate the word happiness. I think people shouldn't chase happiness, but you know, when did you feel accomplished? When did you feel like, you know, you were healthy and fit? And it was when I'd done Lanzarote growth. So that sort of that memory and having those things to fall back on back in 2011 when I gave up the photography was the reason I carried on with endurance. I think had I not cycled Lanzarote growth in 2008, I would never have made the connection in my brain that doing a long cycle journey was the thing I would quite like to try, you know, when I went for around the world. So yeah, it was. I mean, I call it in the book about it, I call it Lanzarote growth. It's the ride that started it all, which is pretty much true, really.
Yeah. And what was next after? So you finished up with photography. What was the next sort of endeavor? Because I kind of want to lead up to like the 105. So that for anyone
Yeah.
who doesn't know, like how I came across Sean was, what was the date that you done the 105 challenge?
10th of April till the 23rd of July last year. So
Yeah, insane, absolutely insane. And he completed 105 full iron distance triathlons, which is 3.8K swim, 180, 185 kilometer cycle.
180. Yeah.
180 into a 42K run, and they done that consistently for 105 consecutive days back to back. I was in absolute awe watching it. I was just blown away. When I first ever came across this, and I know it was a big influence for you, was the Iron Cowboy. And I seen his documentary years ago when he done the 50,
Yeah, yeah.
and then he done 100, and he done 101, didn't he? So then your record had to be 102, and you ended up just doing 105.
Yeah, yeah. I could have gone. I could have carried on more. We'll get
Yeah.
to that in a bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, the quickest straight line journey from me cycling Lanzarote on a Groats to the 105 is I came up with this idea. Well, I didn't realize there was a fourth one, but for 10 years nearly, I was chasing the sort of the three F's of endurance: a first, a furthest, and a fastest. And I got all three. I was the first person to swim Lanzarote on a Groats. I had the world's longest triathlon record. I did a 4,200-mile continuous triathlon. So unlike the 105 where you do swim, bike, run each day, swim, bike, run, the continuous is where you do all the swim in one go, all the bike in one go, all the run in one go. So I did a 4,200 mile of that. And then I was the fastest person to cycle across Europe. So from the edge of Portugal to the Ural Mountains in Russia, the halfway point being the Ukrainian border. So 2,000 miles of it was the Ukraine and Russia. And then I was like, oh, now what? You know, I've done all three. And then I suddenly realized, obviously, there's a fourth category, which is the most. You know, you can do the most of something. You know, the most marathons run in a year, for example, is a common one. Sorry, the most marathons run in a row. And straight away, I just thought of the full iron triathlon record. And yeah, that, you know, I knew that was the one I wanted to go for, 100%. The internet didn't agree with me. But that's quite common in my world, so I don't really take much.
How so? How didn't they agree? What was the
I've
feedback?
never done an Ironman. I've never done an Ironman.
Ah,
Yeah,
right,
and I'm
okay.
too slow. Basically, those are the two main things that people sort of. So when they looked at my back history and my stats and my, you know, performance, basically that was it. He's like, how can you even attempt 102 when you've never even done one full iron, or you've never done an Ironman event or anything? And I still haven't now.
Yeah. Will you? Will you do one?
I don't know. My wife's keen to do one, so I think
Yeah.
we'll do one. I'll do one with her. I think that'll be fun. A triple, I think, is sort of my interest level, where that's sort of coming into the minimum time, because I know I'll never win an Ironman, and I know I can
Yeah.
finish it.
You know
So
you
there's
can do it.
very little interest for me to actually go and spend £1,000 doing one.
Yeah.
Whereas a triple, I like the idea of a triple, but unfortunately, there's in fact brutal events. They've just done their last
Double
event.
brutal.
They were, yeah, that was the double. They did a triple.
Oh, did they? Yeah.
Last year, they only did it every 2 years because they only ever got 5 or 6 people
Yeah.
who wanted to sign up for it. Which is a shame because now that brutal are no longer, they've unfortunately weren't making enough money, so they've folded. There's no, I believe, unless if someone's doing a triple, if there's a triple in the, it doesn't even have to be in the UK. I'd love to. That I feel as it's my minimum, and I'd get quite excited about doing a triple. I think so. But yeah, so basically, people just thought I was too slow, and because I have no experience in doing an Ironman, there's no way I'll be able to do 102. And they were sort of right. Some of them, my pace was probably the thing I didn't work on enough in the first attempt. Although that didn't end my first attempt because it failed on the first attempt. I say failed in inverted commas, by the way, because it's never a failure. You just worked out a way not to do it. So yeah, my pace could have been better. And I worked on that again on the second time. But anyway, the reason I failed is I came off the bike and injured there's a tendon between your sort of shin and the top of your foot, the one that you use to like lift your foot up. And then I just damaged that. And then I timed out on the 17-hour cutoff. So yeah, so that was the main reason people thought that, that no one thought it was impossible. So when I swam the length of Britain, there was a double-edged whammy. There was one, A, this is impossible, and B, Sean, you're not a swimmer, so you can't do it. So there was a sort of like, A, it can't be done, and B, let alone someone who's not a proper swimmer. With the Ironmans, no one believed that it wasn't possible because someone had done 101. So they sort of, although that person said he was going to take the record to the grave. So James Lawrence, Iron Cowboy, he famously said in many, many podcasts, you can go and listen to them, because they would ask him the question, he was like, all right, so when you did the 50, were you scared of someone breaking your record? And his reply was always like, oh, I thought I'd have the 50 for a year and then someone would break it and then no one did. And then I did the 101 and I'm going to take that one to the grave. It was so difficult. When I heard that, I was like, no, you won't.
It's amazing, though, isn't it, though? Because as soon as someone does something, someone else is then inspired to be. It's just you see what's possible, and it's that Roger Bannister theory, isn't it? Of
100%, yeah.
No one's going to break the sub 4 minute mile, and then it's like fast forward the clock now, there's like 2,000 people that have done it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 1,700 now. It's crazy. Yeah. No, with James, bless him,
and we're back. So, guys, apologies. We literally got cut off right there, just in case you wonder why it literally just jumped from us mid conversation to where I'm at right now. But we're just going to carry on from where we left off. So, Sean, you were just in the midst of discussing the impossible, the 105, and you were discussing the Cowboy saying that he was going to be taking it to the grave. Can you just carry on where you left off the best way possible?
Yeah, well, I'm going to blame North Wales storm that just came through. Something tripped anyway. Yeah, so, when I heard that, I knew the 101 record, going for 102 was totally doable from my point of view, even though James Lawrence sort of said he was going to take it to the grave. And I remember when he said that, I was like, no, you won't. Sort of, I was motivated by that. And I, weirdly, I was under no illusion that I was going to keep the record forever. Definitely not. And I almost felt that I would have failed if someone hadn't gone for the record after me, type thing. So I just went into it trying to see if I could do something that I thought would be very difficult for me. And it was a personal challenge, and the terrier in me was excited by it. And that was as simple as it, really. I have to chase difficult things. People keep asking me, why, Sean? What childhood trauma did you have that makes you want to do these things? And none. My childhood was great. I have no idea. I mean, I am ginger, so there's always that. But I just have to chase things. I've worked out I'm just healthier, happier again. Don't like throwing that word around, but I feel more fulfilled in life if I chase these long, hard challenges. And Iron 105, which it later went on to become, was definitely the hardest thing I've had to chase.
Yeah. The question that I was going to ask about it was not necessarily why did you do it, because life's just progress, isn't it? You're only progressing or you're slowing down and you're only growing or you're dying, isn't it? As the saying goes. Everything's progressive overload, isn't it? Like from the minute you done John O'Groats to Land's End, that 25-day cycle, like you were never going to, like, obviously that was parked for a couple of years, but you were never ever going to just stop where you're not going to like chase that progress. So if someone starts running a mile and then they want to progress things, like they can take it to wherever they want to take it to. Do you know what I mean? They can take it to whatever level they can. It's just everything's just progressive overload. So my question wasn't really why did you do it? My question was what did it take to even conjure up the idea? But and then I don't mean about actually coming up with the idea. I'm like, do you feel that you had to be ready to even actually that you've never done an Ironman before? Obviously, you've got the credentials to do this. Like as you said, your power's maybe not there in the sense that like speed, pace, but like what sort of do you feel like you had to have done the cycle around the world, the the speed record for across Europe, the all these things, swimming the length of the UK, did you feel that that was your credentials that kind of allowed you to back yourself, to trust yourself to do this?
100%. Yeah. There's 10.5 pillars of fitness, or pillars of endurance, or pillars of success in the world of sport, or endurance sport anyway. I'll just briefly quickly go over them. There's planning, experience, health, conditioning, nutrition, hydration, sleep, muscle management, mindset, community, and then the 0.5 one is luck. You know, you've got to have a bit of luck sometimes. And the second one is experience. So, you know, during Iron 105, there was only one or two things that cropped up that I'd never seen before. You know, so when it was really cold in the mornings, some of those early mornings, I was like, well, this is not nearly as cold as that time I was, you know, in the Arctic that one time. And it was really hot. I'm like, well, this is not nearly as hot as that time I cycled across the Atacama Desert. And it was really windy. I'm like, well, this is not nearly as windy as when I got chased by tornadoes in Oklahoma. You know, when I picked up that knee issue, you know, a knee issue early on, I was like, well, I've had this before when I ran the length of Britain, and I know how to deal with it. When I picked up the shoulder injury, I was like, well, that's the cheese rolling shoulder from 2009, and I know how to deal with that. So all the things that's happened during Iron 105, I could call, there's a whole catalog of experiences and memories of how to fix them, you know. So I was like, right, so it didn't get overwhelmed, which is another reason why older people get better at endurance. It's not that they biologically, there is some science that you are better, but mostly it's you know how to deal with the pain and the misery, and what, you know, when things go wrong, you know how to tackle it because you've tackled it before. And certainly, you know, had I not, you know, cycled around the world, swum the length of Britain, run the length of Britain, you know, all those experiences, done the world's longest triathlon, they all just added to my bank of experience, which helped me deal with, you know, coping with Iron 105. That said, the biggest difference why Iron 105 is the hardest thing I've done is there's no averaging. And pretty much everything else I've done is there's been an averaging element to it. The easiest way to explain that is, you know, for example, you can average a marathon a day for a year, or you can run an actual marathon every single day for a year. They're actually two very different records. They sound the same, and there's a lot of people who will go like, oh, you know, so someone did a marathon a day for a year last year. I can't remember his name. Got lots of publicity, raised £1 million for charity. It was incredible. And I remember reading the blog saying, oh no, blah blah blah. You know, did a 401 or whatever. And I was like, well, actually, he didn't actually do a marathon a day. He averaged a marathon a day because he had a week off for injury, and he had some shorter days and he had some longer days. It's still as sort of impressive when you go for the longer stuff, but the actual one is harder. It's definitely harder because you can't have a rest day. You can't have a day off if you get injured. It's the record's over. You know, if you miss, you've got a calendar day to do it. If you're, you know, 100 meters short on distance, you can't add that 100 meters tomorrow. It just doesn't work like that. So the actual one is harder than the averaging one. So yeah, with when I cycled across Europe, I just had to average. I had to be quicker on average than the guy before me. When I did the world's longest triathlon, I had to just sort of again just go longer. And as long as I didn't take 2 years to do it, it was still a legitimate record. Whereas this one, yeah, just every single day I had to tick those 10.5 pillars, just to make sure that I didn't time out or didn't, avoiding injury and all that sort of thing. So, back to your question of, was it all those other things I did in the past? 100%.
Yeah.
Could someone who had not had multi-day experience do the full irons? Possibly, but I think they'd have to have a lot of advice and help from other people who had potentially done it.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I coached someone or if I was helping someone to break the record, that would probably make it a bit easier, because I could go, right, well, actually, I'm not a physio, but all the other things outside of physio I could help with, really. And yeah, that's just all part of the experience. For example, 105 days is only the third longest thing I've done. So not even that went into the ballpark of breaking sort of my, I've done 155 days cycle around the world, 135 days swimming Britain. So yeah, you just need those experience, which is again another philosophy I try and tell people is you just got to play the long game, especially with people who want to train for a marathon, for example. They sort of think, oh well, it's January, I'll enter the London Marathon in April, and I'm like, you can do it. It's definitely doable, 100%. But you're just increasing your risk of failure. You increasing your risk of getting injured, losing motivation when you try and increase the trajectory of that progression graph, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because you've got no base, you've got no like foundations psychologically, physiologically, like your body's. I call it one pace running, where you get to this point where it's like now it's great that folk are doing so many different events, but they'll be like, right, 5K, 10K, 21K, marathon, and it's like all within 6 months, and you're like, it's not that you can't do it or it's not a good thing, but it diminishes a lot of your efficiency. Like you were talking earlier on about power, you lose a lot of fitness. Like, yeah, you're able to endure for longer, but like you're not actually like getting better in the distance. Do you know what I mean? You're not actually improving economy within that as well. The reason why I asked that question, Sean, was I don't know if you've seen last week or the week before, but Ross Edgley broke the world record for the longest river swim. It was
Yeah.
10 kilometers, I think it was.
Yeah.
And something I think it was his doctor, his coach, I don't know, someone that was part of his team was like narrating the vlog at this point, and they were like, Ross's unique experiences through life and challenge are the only reason that he's able to be here and cope with all these different things. Because if you took myself and done that, I would probably be like literally after like 12 hours, like 6 hours, like not even 6 hours in the Yukon River, like
Yeah.
I'd be like freaking out, like I'm gonna get hypothermia, but because of all those unique points in his journey, the failures, the lessons, the mess ups, the actually experience in the heart of actually going to that dark place, you're only able to do that. So along with the actual physical conditioning, you need to have that psychological condition to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah, totally. And for Ross's, the biggest sort of the step into the unknown is the sleep deprivation bit in water. That's the biggest scary thing. I think that's the reason a lot of other people don't do long big swims, is because you've really got to know where you're at on the sleep deprivation side of things, when it comes to that. Because I've done 40 hours. What did Ross do? 50 something?
he's done multiple. He's done like seven. He's done 60 odd at some point when he done lot.
Yeah.
I think he done like 60. Like
Yeah, exactly, which is incredible. That sort of time in the water. Sorry, my phone's going off.
it's all right, don't worry.
What is that? Sorry.
I'm always paranoid about mine's going off because I don't know how to switch it off from being connected to the computer. So I'm just hopeful that nobody calls me.
As I said, doing that sort of time in the water, there's a massive unknown for people. So you're right. It's only the fact that he's done it in the past. Was he able to know his body? Like, right, okay, cool. I've done 60 hours. So, you know, when he was at hour 48 or whatever,
Yeah.
2 days in, he's like, well, I've actually done more than this, and I know how it
Yeah.
feels. I know what to do to make it better. You know, if I take this amount of caffeine and this amount of calories and blah blah blah, it'll probably help a little bit in that sense. And yeah, you're right. It's all that experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, which is probably why, again, you know, he's doing stuff that a lot of people would be too scared to do because of the
Yeah.
water-based element to it and sleeping. Because, you know, physiologically, I don't know how. It'd be interesting to know how much of that 510 Ks was swimming.
Yeah.
You know, because it is a river swim. So
Yeah.
you know, if he had not swum at all and just floated, I wonder how far that he would have gone.
Yeah.
So there was, but that in itself had dangers because, you know, a mate of mine has done a river swim. I've never done a river swim. You know, you get these logs that are like 30 centimeters below the surface, and
Yeah.
you
And you
can't
just
see
hit
them.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're going down the river at 10 miles an hour and you hit that just poof, in the chest, you know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's proper sketchy. So I was very impressive really impressive that swim.
Yeah. There was a
Um,
point that he said that he actually kicked a rock so hard it was like just booting a
yeah.
wall blindfolded. Like, and he says, but the cold and the sleep deprivation was just taken away from the pain.
Yeah, totally.
Mad. Like
Yeah,
it's
no,
mad, insane. But
yeah,
do you feel
absolutely.
see, obviously I know that you done the world record at time from Lands was it Land's End to John O'Groats to swim?
Well, it was the first ever, the first ever length of Britain swim,
Yeah,
Land's End
yeah.
John O'Groats. So
So obviously I know that he done that. Do you like
well,
obviously
he did a lap. He went further.
yeah,
So
yeah,
once he went
that's
up, he went all the way down. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So see you were talking about like the Iron Cowboy, like and have you had anyone that you've known that you've inspired to then go and take that like to go to the next thing? Like is that an example right there? Like I don't know if you've ever met Ross or that, but do you feel like that was like because obviously like the as I said before, the 4 minute mile with the Roger Bannister theory, like have you
Yeah.
experienced that? Like anyone kind of seeing you and being like I'm going to go and take that. Like, I'm just curious to see if you've actually know firsthand if you've inspired anyone to.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly Ross has never reached out to me, even when he did a lap of Britain. So yeah, I mean, he does. I tried to get him to come and join me on the Ironmans, and he never replied. So screw you,
Yeah.
Ross. I'm just kidding. No. uh, no, I mean, undoubtedly, what I will say is that, you know, the people because all my records have been broken except the length of Britain. No one's done a length of Britain triathlon, so no one's done a swim, bike, run, Land's End, John O'Groats. But yeah, all my other records have been broken, including the Ironman. So someone broke mine 2 weeks ago. So I'd like to think that, you know, there's a part of me, you know, that what I did, they went, oh, it maybe didn't inspire them, I would say, but it certainly helped in the logistics. Like when I broke some records from other people, I looked at how they did it and go, right, well, I think, you
Yeah.
know, when James Lawrence did his 101, I looked at everything, all his data and everything. I was like, right, well, I don't think he did that very well, so I'll do that better. And oh, we did this. Okay, maybe that's probably a good idea for that. So you're just sort of learning
Yeah.
um, on someone else's thing, you know, and that's what sport is, as you said. You know, when
Yeah.
Roger Bannister did the 4 minute mile, everyone's like, "Oh wow, how did he do it?" Right, okay, right. He gets up at 3 a.m. He runs this, and okay, wow, sweet. Well, I think I could do that. And then, as you say, all of a sudden, 20 people did it within a year or something. I don't know the maths, but
Actually,
yeah,
seen something recently, Sean. I think, like, again, it's I don't know if you've looked into this more, like, but it was basically talking about like peaking performance and over the last 100 years, like, have we actually peaked as human beings? And they basically took the likes of, like, obviously, at the time of Roger Bannister, when was that? Like 19, that was
oh, I
a
couldn't
long
tell
time
you.
ago. It was like black and white. Everything was
Yeah,
black and white.
yeah.
But at that time, they ran on ash tracks. Like it was like an ash track. Like the example of Usain Bolt and Jesse Owens, they actually took like someone basically analyzed Jesse Owens' strides, his power, his size,
Hmm.
and he done it with no what's the bit at the start called where they put the tracks with the
Blocks, yeah,
blocks, yeah. He had no
yeah,
blocks. He done it in a pair of fucking sand shoes, basically.
yeah,
And them
yeah,
on ash. He dug the start point with a trowel in the ash. And they actually worked out that although like it was like 40 seconds, 30 seconds of a difference, if he had all the stuff that he had now, he would only be milliseconds behind Usain Bolt.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's actually so interesting. I think that's like, it just shows you that like in certain things, like I think where we're going to see most of the records being broke now is in human endurance. Like because like folk will continue to break records. Like there's 3K, 2K runs being broke recently and stuff, but
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's going to become so minute to break these things. But I think where we're going to see a lot of the definitely is these staged endurance days where it's like someone just doing something for such a long period of time is where the all the mad records are going to be now, I think, personally.
Yeah, I agree, and that's there's a couple of reasons for that. I think one, right. So to get better at a sport, there's two real main reasons. You're either physically better or the technology is better, right? So and you might be slightly slower, but the technology will be much higher. For example, let's just take time trialing on bicycles. When you look at Chris Boardman, who was amazing at time trialing, if you actually physically look at the data, he was probably 2 or 3 minutes had a 2 or 3 minute disadvantage purely from aerodynamics point of view, nothing else. So all of a sudden nowadays, where if someone measured on a time trial bike where you grab the brakes, so where you're obviously down on your elbows on the bars the whole time, but every now and then you got to go and grab the brakes to go around a corner. If you have bar tape that's only about 5 centimeters long on that bit where you grab the brakes, that is 1 or 2 watts, which is 2 or 3 seconds over 40K or whatever the thing is. And that's, I'm thinking, you would think, no way, how is that little bit of bar tape going to
Yeah.
cost me 2 or 3 seconds? But it does, and that's why they all shaving legs 40 seconds, apparently
Mhm.
over X distance, whatever it is. I think it was only over 40K or something. So, there's the technology side and then there's the human performance side. And then, at some point they got to bring in some rules because, for example, when Nike, the predecessor to the Vaporfly, was banned because of I don't know why, but they've started having to bring in rules. So you're only allowed one carbon plate in a shoe now, because
Yeah.
some people were putting two carbon plates in, for example. Um, so records I still think will always get beaten, uh, because I still think we haven't tapped out on the biological
Yeah, yeah.
side of it either yet. I think because within that you got to look at nutrition, you got to look at sleep, you got to look
Yeah.
at recovery. I think more people are doing it, so there's bigger pools. I think there's a lot more science available to just everyday Joe blogs. 30 years ago, you almost had to be an athlete as part of a university program or a science program to work out, what your what lactic threshold is all about and what heart rate zone training was all about. Whereas now, juniors are doing it,
Yeah.
just by going on the internet and going on YouTube and buying, good kit, not even that expensive kit, really. So, they're having access to all that information. The other thing, and I have written about this, why endurance records, I think endurance records still aren't at anywhere near where they could be. And I think my reason for it is it hasn't attracted high level athletes, if I'm
Yeah.
honest. And I'm probably a good example of that. I was crap at sport at school. I only really started sport when I was 30. You know, in 50 years' time, they'll look back at me and go, "Oh my god, do you know he only started sport when he was 30? Jeez, like, nowadays you have to start endurance sport when you're
Yeah.
12."
Yeah.
A bit like golf and tennis, right? Um, so it's never attracted the high level sportsmen and women, the endurance stuff, because there's been no money in it and there's been no fame and glory, which some people require, and that's the reason they go into it. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. If that's why you want to go and be an Olympian because of that gold medal and what you'll get for it, then absolutely, that's your fuel. 100%, I'm all for it. So it's not my fuel, but yeah, I can see why it would be some people's fuel. So And now we're starting to see some ex-pros start doing endurance,
Yeah.
and they are smashing it. Because I remember when I broke the across Europe record, there was an overall feeling that if a Tour de France cyclist got into ultra cycling, that'd be rubbish because they're so pandered to, they're so used to having everything handed to them on a plate and blah blah blah. And I disagreed with that. I thought at the time, and I used Chris Froome as an example in my book, Big Mile Cycling. I said, if Chris Froome, left the Tour de France and decided to get into ultra cycling, I think he would smash it.
Yeah.
I think he'd smash it. Now that's been proven right, not with Chris Froome, but with Lachlan Morton. He didn't even make EDF for Tour de France. He wasn't good enough. Like, he genuinely wasn't good enough. So he thought, all right, well, I'm going to get into the ultra. And now he's smashing it.
Yeah.
Got the Tour Divide record. He's just about to go. Has he started the around Australia cycling record? Which is something I thought of having a crack at. 2017. So, basically what I'm saying is I think a lot of the pros who, when they get to retirement, are still quite good for the ultra scene, endurance scene. So they're just slotting into that, and because they can sort of still make a living from the ultra scene now through YouTube and sponsorship and stuff like that, it's still a viable sort of thing for them to do. Whereas before, there was no money in it, so all the ex Tour de France cyclists, for example, were just like, oh, well, I'm just going to get into coaching now, or teaching, or being part of another team, or whatever. Whereas now they go, well, actually, I think I could do another 10 years of just going longer, basically. And that seems to be, anyway, that's my theory on why the ultra scene is still really in its infancy, for some of these sort of big hard world records.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And something you kind of touched base on there was something me and Ailey were discussing the other day. And we were at a seminar recently with the current High Rocks world record holder and 3 times world champion. And he came fifth that year, I think it was. But he basically I was talking to him afterwards, Hunter McIntyre. And I said to him, I was like, what? I've been consuming a lot of his content online, and this guy's 34 or 35. And he's in his peak and he's nowhere near stopping. And I said, what it's really taught me is that, like, I think there's obviously certain sports, like you said, Sean, like in your 20s, you need to start them at a young age because of the motor skills required, like because of like your efficiency. But I'm seeing more and more people now like doing like logging things on Instagram and YouTube, like day one of me becoming a professional football player. And I'm like, I thought you could only do that when you were like a young boy. But what's really happened now, and what I believe is that because people have more awareness and more vision through vlogs, YouTube, social media, a lot of people probably went, well, it's my career over now. Whereas people are now actually going, no, where can I push my longevity into rather than thinking I'll just finish here. And if you look at, for example, Shimon, what's her name? Simone Biles, is it?
Simone Biles, yeah,
Yeah,
the
gymnast,
gymnast, yeah.
27 years old. And there was a few gymnasts on the US team that were in, one was in, and then like the sprint team in their 30s, she's 27, I think she is. And then you go rewind back the clock to gymnastics back in the 1980s, 1990s, and it was children. Like, it was actually children. So you can see that with the improvement in sports science, nutrition, people were actually being like, no, these people were actually continuing to be in their prime well into their 30s rather than like going, that's him done now. But that's probably a lot to do with like strict regimented training and breaking people, and people just getting absolutely exhausted by it probably as well. There's probably an element of that. But it's interesting. It's interesting to see how like the landscape's changed in the sense of like the longevity in sports. Like, people are actually, because it used to be like even football players, people were like, yeah, you're retired like when you're like 30.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then look at some of the football players now. Look at Ronaldo. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've got to be careful to look at the outliers, So that's you've got your sort of outliers, and then your norm,
Yeah.
your average and your norm. Unfortunately, the outliers is a better story, So there's a classic example. It's sort of the Tiger Woods versus the Roger Federer, right?
Yeah.
If you think of Tiger Woods, how did he get good? You like, well, his parents gave him a golf club when he was 18 months old and made him do it from a young age, and all of a sudden became amazing. But actually, if you look at the norm for that, that is not the case for most sport. Most people do pick it up at a normal age. Most people try loads of different sports, like Roger Federer, for example. if you look at when he started tennis, it was quite late. I want to say he was like 20, because
Wow.
he did rugby and he did loads of other different sports. That actually, if you look at it, is the norm, but it's a less cool story. Everyone wants the story of the sort of the person who like started when they were really young, because it's you can repeat it, right? It's repeatable, right? So now every parent who wants their kid to be a golfer, they look at Tiger Woods and the Williams sisters and go, right, well, we just need to make them play tennis. But even the Williams sisters, like, their dad, even though he was super hardcore and motivated to make them play tennis, he did make them good, finish school and do lots of other things as well. And when tennis was getting too much, he told them to stop it. So yeah, there is a lot. And the longevity side of things, yeah, that one is more interests me, because you're right. How are people able to extend their careers? Now, I feel there's just outliers out there who are able to go longer, and that could be just basically because they just got lucky genetically. I think maybe
Yeah.
they got lucky genetically. Maybe they in a position within that sport that's not as grueling physically. Um, Ronaldo. Why is Ronaldo still in it? I don't know. I don't really watch football, so maybe the position he plays isn't as taxing on his body. I doubt that. I think it probably is still quite taxing.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe he just has more money to pay for all the rehab.
Just gets massages constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what his rehab is, but I know he has a bicycle in his swimming pool. So
Yeah.
but I have seen him doing rehab on his what do you call it, bike?
Or bike.
Yeah, in the pool. So yeah, there could be lots of reasons why longevity is staying. Um, it could be as simple as motivation. You
Yeah,
know,
I think as well, like, and a lot of people, when Joe Blogs is talking about genetics, people throw that word, maybe I've got this genetic or I can't do this. Like, for Gen Pop, genetics don't matter anything. Like, see when you're in the
yeah,
infancy of what you're doing. But when
mm,
you're reaching peak performance and you're at the top of your game, like, genetics play a massive part. Like, they play a big, big part. And, like, for especially, like, you imagine you measured someone up against, like, it's not going to separate someone from doing it, mindset,
mm,
experiences, all this stuff. But like I've definitely seen there is some people like I've got some clients that I'm just like they can cope with way more demand than some other people.
yeah,
They can recover better.
yeah, yeah,
They can tolerate way more. They've got a work capacity that again that goes back to like childhood and stuff as well. Maybe they started working a labor intensive job and
yeah,
a young age, but it's I've definitely noticed like at the beginning it doesn't really matter as much. It's not saying that it shouldn't stop you, like it
yeah,
shouldn't be
yeah,
it stops you, but because I've seen as well in a video that you were asked in a podcast before. I can't remember who it was, but it was have you been like tested in regards to um like any sort of superiority or genetics? And you were like, no, I've actually got a salt deficiency.
yeah, yeah. No, I have been tested, and I did all the tests, and it was. When I went into it, I was like, "Yeah, man, this is awesome. They're gonna find something out about me." And then I've got a salt deficiency, which means I get dehydrated very quickly unless I have
Yeah.
lots of salt. Like 3 times as much salt as most people. So that's a bit frustrating. But yeah, no, you're right though, and it's a difficult one because you want to tell people a story that motivates them to do something, but then you've just got to be honest with yourself at what level you want to do that thing at.
Yeah.
Now, I can do endurance sport because yes, I've been tested and I have no advantage at all from when you look at all my power, salt, sweat, all that sort of stuff. However, I'm a good weight and I'm a
Yeah.
good body type. There's no getting away from that fact. My race weight 68 kgs. I'm 5'8" on a good day. Probably 5'7" or something. So I'm quite short. I'm quite light, which means my joints don't take a hammering. Proportionally, I'm quite good. I'm a whatever endomorph. I think I am. No, what's the other one? I don't know what I am, but I'm one of the three.
Metal.
Yeah. Is that the one? Yeah.
So yeah.
Um, uh, so there is that luck there a little bit. So my height and weight does help me. It's not the best. Like I'll never be an amazing swimmer, for example. because I'm just too short. Like if you just look at all the data, it would. I don't want to say it's impossible, but you got to choose your battles, right? You know, if I decided I wanted to get into the NBA, it's not possible. Like it is biologically not possible for me to get into the NBA. You can have all the motivation in the world. You have to be 7 foot, almost. So yeah, there's that. So you've got to just sort of look at where you're at, and what you want to do. And unfortunately, there are just some people who are biologically going to be better at you at that sport. You know, if you want to get to the first, you know, if you want to become a base at the NBA, what's the baseball one? The American baseball, whatever you call it, whatever league.
NBA national. No, it's national basketball.
Oh, it's basketball. Anyway,
I don't know.
All the Americans listening to us are going, "Oh, how can you not remember?" Anyway, if you want to be a professional baseball player in America, guess what the first test is? First one, but you won't even get selected. So first test, you go into the lab. What's the first thing they test? Have a guess.
I've got no idea. Absolutely no idea. I didn't want to guess. Blood.
Yeah, no. Vision.
What?
Vision. 2020.
Yeah.
It's impossible, apparently, to play high level baseball without 2020 vision.
Yeah.
Because you just can't see the ball as good. So automatically, if you don't have that, okay, you could probably get surgery and maybe wear glasses or something. But, you know, they looked at that. Also, if you want to be a professional climber, you know, you have to have a positive ape index where your ape index is your height versus your arm wingspan, basically, right? If you have wider arms than your height, you're going to be good at rock climbing. If you want to be a good runner, you have to have higher hip height, longer legs than your torso. So there is a lot of, unfortunately, there is, and it's not a fun answer because you want to sort of give everyone the belief that they can do it. And yes, you can do it up to 98%. Most people could get to 98%, but if you want to get that gold medal at the Olympics, then there will be some biological advantages to other people, and that's just life. Unfortunately, that is just the way it is. But that said, getting up to 98% is still pretty good. You know, so don't be dissuaded to try and be amazing at something. But know that, you know, I think that's important information that people need to know, especially if there's young kids who are going, right, I want to do. And some sports, there's nothing. There are some sports where there is no biological advantage, of course. But, you know, I've taken basketball and sumo wrestling off the table for myself.
I'm waiting for the 2025 basketball challenge NBA appearance of Sean Conway.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
I'll be the guy they throw into the hoop to block the ball from going in.
I see this stuff though. It's stuff that no one really talks about though, isn't it? It's not disheartening anyone of that at all. But it's just like it's facts. Sometimes it's just looking at things and being like, right, what's my expectation for myself here? I was talking about in the podcast yesterday with Dan. Like, if you do anything for a period of time, you become very good at it, and it mostly becomes a game of outlasting. Like you can still be one of the top, and I think that's what I love about like the stuff you've done, Sean. Is that like, as you said, it's maybe not being capitalized on in the sense that like it's not being glamorized, it's not attracted the right people. But like, if you look at some of the people that have records like what you do, Sean, it's like they're not outliers. They're not like people. It's like it's because it's the what we spoke about, that experience, that number 2 that you said at the 10, is that they've got this like experience and this number 9, I think it was, mindset that allows them to actually go and do these things. Yeah, there's physiological, nutrition, hydration, all this good stuff there, but like massively like mindset. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot, and that's what I love about a lot of like different sports is that like someone can still have a fucking off day, and then your mindset on the day can be the thing that actually prevails. And does it? I don't know if you've ever seen the race before with. We definitely will talk about the 105 Ironman after this, but I love just talking about stuff like this. It's a famous speed skating in the Olympics. I can't remember what race it was, but it was like it's really famous.
The Chinese girl sprinted and got to the back of after lap 1. Are you talking about that one?
It's the one where everyone falls. And
oh no, okay.
Yeah. So basically, like, there's this guy, and he's like, I think he's Canadian. I believe he's Canadian. It was a male, so I know it wasn't the story you were talking about there. But basically, he's at the back, and like in that sport, he's at the back by a country mile. Even though it's only like 4 meters, that's like a country mile. Because the other guys are like all literally on each other, but they're so focused on each other that they fall. They all fall. And then right at the end, he just literally goes by them and wins the Olympics. And it's
Yeah.
you just have these moments and these points. And there's my coach at the moment, we're training for High Rocks at the moment, me and my partner, and we've both got the same coach. And he reminds us that it's horses, not courses. He's like, because it's totally work capacity. And he's like, someone can have an off day.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
depends on what your mindset is like on the day. Are you going to be in a good mindset or are you going to be in a negative mindset? Because I can imagine, did you have to fight that a lot when you were doing the 105? Like, what was like some of the like days where you woke up and you didn't want to do it? Like, what was that like?
So I never had that once
Did
because
you not?
it was a non-negotiable for me to get up and do them,
Yeah,
and I fully wholeheartedly believe in that. You needed the discipline. I needed the discipline. I needed the non-negotiables. I never questioned it when my alarm went off at 4:29 every day. Honestly, didn't question it. I knew I had to get up and go to work basically, and that's what I thought, and that's how I put it in the same category as putting your clothes on, brushing your teeth, all the stuff that we
yeah,
none of us question every single day. And so I never got up. I never questioned it. However, there were of course like loads of dark days, and some of them were from external factors, like, and I wrote about it in the book. There's a guy who accused me of cheating quite early on, but with no reason. He just, I don't know why he did it. Quite a famous guy. If I mention his name, everyone will know who he is. Um, I've had to change his name in the book. I don't want to throw him under the bus either because I think he was reacting to something that I don't know. But anyway, that was dark. Because if he had gone public, he was so famous and so well known that people would have believed him, type thing. Really, So I was like, that was dark. So what are the protocols for me when times are dark? Right, I I I really reverse engineer why I'm feeling bad or the performance is bad and that sort of thing. And I guess if I had a superpower, that would be it, as I micromanage all those sort of things, all those 10.5 pillars. So basically, you know, when when I got accused of cheating, I was like, right. So I'm feeling down now because this guy, and I don't know what he's going to do. Is he going to make a statement, even though there's no data? But if he does, people will believe him because of who he is. Right. So obviously, the thing that I'm struggling with in these 10.5 pillars is mindset. Okay. Right. So I know it's mindset. Now, how can I get my mindset up? Well, I know how to do that now. I need to eat a bit better. I keep on top of nutrition, keep on top of hydration, keep on top of my sleep. And then also, quite importantly, the community is the 10th pillar. Get the community around me to support me. And that really pulled me through that because, like some of the closest people who used to come and join me regularly, I told them about, and showed them the messages and that sort of thing. And they were like, oh, screw him, mate. Yeah, whatever. Doesn't know what he's talking about. And then that really helped, having that community side of it. And then that got me out of it. And then other days I'd feel down because I'd picked up a little niggle. And then I'm like, oh, damn it, I'm niggle and I'm slower. So now I'm half an hour slower. I'm getting half an hour less recovery. And the worry about that is tomorrow I'm then going to be another 10 minutes slow on top of the half an hour. And then which means I'll get even less recovery, which means I might even go slower again. And then it's the downward whirlpool into failure, basically, until you time out. So, I was like, right, okay, well, I'm down today because of the niggle. Right, what do I need to do? Right, so let's go to muscle management. What do I need to do on muscle management? I've got various protocols there and I try them, cold, so ice baths, or hot baths, or sauna, or acupuncture, or cupping, or massage, or stretching, or compression boots, all those sort of things. And depending on what it is, I'll try. Okay, right, what's really working this time. And for the Ironmans, it's pretty much was the thing I stuck to in the end. Got rid of most of everything else other than weekly massage. Is hot bath, real hot bath, get that blood flowing, and then do a bit of massage gun, a bit of foam rollering, a bit of stretching, and that seemed to stave off the downward pace projection with that injury. The injury didn't fix the injury. It just allowed me to sustain a pace that didn't get me into that whirlpool, if you know what I mean. And then other times, it was, seeing my wife having a real tough day with our two boys. We had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, neither of which were at school yet, pretty, my oldest was at reception, but still, that's a tough. Caroline was basically solo parenting the boys, and it's tough. So I'd get home and I'd have I've just done a 15-hour Ironman, and I seen the boys have been running around causing havoc, and then that made me feel bad. I'm like, oh, what's the point in me doing this if I'm putting my family in difficulty? So it's just having conversations with her. Decided to try and get some extra help from friends and family, which really helped. And then also said, right, Karen, why don't you try and come and join me once a week and do a marathon? So she came and ran every Sunday and did a marathon with me, which was amazing. Just great to have her there. So, that's how I get out my dark bits, is I micromanage and reverse engineer and self-analyze and try and work out the root cause of it, and find a way of trying to fix it. I'm definitely a fixer in life. If someone says they have a problem, the terrier in me it's like, right, how can we fix this? Let's go. It's like, right, we do this. It doesn't work, we try that. And I'm quite good at that, I guess.
Yeah, that's obviously came through a lot of, like, I know you wrote hiccups. I was looking at it in your website, like, not failures, because they're lessons, aren't they? And along the way, like, there's been a lot of errors along the way that have stopped you. Like, as you said, 2022, day 7, you had to you literally, did you break your leg when you done it, or you said it already, or what was the damage you done to your foot?
Yeah, so I tore that tendon between my shin and the upper foot. That was on day 5, actually.
Day 5, was it? Yeah.
The crash, and then I pushed on, but then I just timed out, basically. Got the 17-hour cutoff. And then once you timed out, really. So I think I'd actually timed out on day 6, but hadn't realized. So really, day 7 was a waste. I shouldn't have done day 7.
Yeah.
Because I'd already timed out, and I was so tired I didn't realize it, because I wasn't having regular start times, which I was then adamant about on Iron 105. So yeah, day 7 not only was pointless because I timed out already, it also did way more damage than it should have. I should have. If I'd pulled the plug on day 6, my recovery might have been 4 to 6 weeks, but the recovery landed up being like 10, 12 weeks. Just because of that extra day, really. So it was my own fault. But the terrier in me was like, at least get to a week. Well, no, I didn't know. The terrier, although getting to 7 was sort of a nice idea in my head, I did sort of think that potentially I'd just magically wake up and it would have recovered overnight.
Yeah.
Which is stupid, because it was never going to have recovered. But
I think in these situations, though, we sometimes, like, it's the emotional side of it, isn't it? Where we're like, I just need to keep going. Like,
yeah, and not only just the emotional side, like, just practically, giving up on day 7 came with a whole lot of headaches.
Yeah.
From sponsorship to crew.
Yeah.
I had crew who were on board for 3.5 months a weekend. They were like, oh crap, where's my money, basically, is what they said. And rightfully so. I promised them a salary, and they're in a job, and it was my fault that it ended, so they still needed paying, right? So there's a lot of all that sort of stuff that came with only getting to day 7, which I had to deal with. But
I think that's the pressure that I really like, as I've started to take things more competitively, and I've got to know athletes that are performing at quite a high level, and the pressure that is in place when you're doing something quite significant is crazy. Like, I've had it on, and this is only small, like, where I've vlogged things, but I've invested in having a videographer there, and people have came, and then you're like, and then you don't do the thing you were going to do, and it's like, it's just this self-doubt and this, like, questioning so much, but you don't anticipate that. But then again, I suppose it's one of those things that, like, you don't know what's going to happen. That's a freak accident, as you said, that you're not going to stop, but an actual injury just force you to stop. It's unfortunate. And I can imagine you talk about these points in life, don't you? You kind of talk about them, sort of, you skim over them, but at the time it's like pretty hard. Because everything that's going on. So I'm curious as well, like, see, anytime I've done anything that's, like, I've never done anything to that size, right, obviously, but, like, the thing that I've always found is that on the day doing these things, or the days, like, in your sense here, months, you end up getting this sort of unexpected thing that comes about. Like, I've definitely found if I've got, like, a support crew or anything like that, or, like, there's this like there's almost this joy that I didn't even expect that I would get from it. Was there anything that came about that you didn't really expect? It was like an amazing part of the full journey, like friendships, or it came about something else, like anything like that?
Yeah, the sort of the overwhelming thing that happened on the Iron 105 was just the community aspect. I never dreamed in a million years that the same people would come out and join me regularly, doing the same loops every single
Yeah.
day. The bike leg was 112 miles, but I was doing three. There was a bit at the beginning, and then three loops of 30 miles or whatever, and then a bit back to the run start T2, and they're boring. It's just the same loops past the same industrial estate over the same crappy road surfaces. And I just, it took me ages to, I mean, probably took me to day 60 or 70 or 80 even, to work out why. Like, why are they taking days off work? Why are they coming to cycle in the rain and just cycle in loops with me? There's way better roads to cycle in North Wales and Cheshire. There's way better days to go out. Like, why? I just didn't. I just didn't get it. I was like, I had imposter syndrome. I had inferiority complex. I just didn't get it. And then it was only sort of towards the end that I started realizing, well, actually, they are getting something from this. They're getting fitter for one. A lot of these cyclists were using it as a training day. It was an opportunity for a lot of them to do a really fast 100 miler. We were doing 100 miles in 5 hours pretty much. So
That what you were doing? The
yeah. So
Wow.
every day of the week, if you wanted to do a fast 100 miler on a Thursday when all your mates are at work and you're out by yourself because it's your day off, you're like, oh, I'll just go enjoy Sean. I'll go and cycle with Sean because I know he's doing a fast 100 miler today. So it was a good way for people to do big, like, tick over those big numbers on a Thursday, where normally, if that was the day they wanted to ride, they'd be on their own and the motivation maybe wouldn't be there. So that in itself became this amazing thing. So, there's still a WhatsApp group with all those regulars who used
Yeah.
to come a
Amazing.
lot, and we chat, and we did a pub crawl. There's 11 pubs on my cycle route for Iron 105. We did a pub crawl on them this time last year. We need to do it again, actually. And yeah,
It
that
was
was
good.
amazing. So yeah, the community that's come out of it will definitely be the sort of the lasting legacy. 100%. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I was curious because I was thinking about like, my own experiences and what I've seen kind of because it's the unexpected things that make these so good, isn't it? Like anything that you do, it's always the people, isn't it? We ran a
Yeah.
retreat. We're actually running the retreat next week, and we ran one in April, and loads of people were asking me about it, and it was honestly one of the highlights of my career as a coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people were like, "What did you do?" And I was like, "It wasn't what we'd done. It was the people." I was like, it was just an amazing group of people that had an incredible week with each other in a great space. And I think I think now because we're so online and so connected but disconnected that like when you actually get these things, like you appreciate it. And anytime I've done stuff like this, it's like it's an adventure. Do you know what I mean? It's just a total adventure, and you're just with a bunch of people that are on that adventure with you. But that's awesome, mate. I'm glad to hear that there's been a really good. It's impacted a lot of people, not only who went with you, but folk that were actually directly with you. That's amazing. What was was there any strange things that like after that like so see when you do something like this, it requires like obviously mindset, physiology, obviously like physiologically fit to do it. But like, was there anything that like you, when you came away from it, you struggled to come to terms with? You know how like when people get institutionalized when they go to like prison for too long, like
Yeah. Yeah.
was there anything that when you came away from this, it was like strange not to do, or you got used to, like you normalized? Like when I remember, like Russ Cook when he ran the length of Africa, was like not showering, and he says he was just like really like disgusting. Like I don't know if that like was the same for you, but he just got so used to being so disgusting.
Yeah. 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 When I swam the length of Britain in 3.5 months, 4.5 months swimming the length of Britain, I think I had 4 or 5 showers that whole time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got pretty used to not showering then as well. Um, I was drinking a lot of full fat cream during the Ironmans, and having to stop drinking full fat cream was a bit weird. And I felt really bad. We'd always buy the full fat cream from a specific off license at my feed station in Holt, And I remember going down to the off license a week after, and they had hundreds of full fat creams on the shelf because obviously their reordering algorithms had gone, well, we sell a lot of full fat cream in Holt, so we'll just automatically buy extra. And then all of a sudden, no one was buying them anymore. And yeah, so because to keep the weight on, really. And I'll be interested to see if there's a performance element to drinking full fat cream. I mean, I think there probably would have been because my heart rate was only 110 or something, so it was pretty low. But I still think in my head, I wasn't relying on the full fat cream from a performance based. It was entirely a weight saving protocol.
Yeah.
Stop me losing too much weight.
Yeah.
And it worked. It must have worked because I only lost 3 kgs in the
Wow.
whole of Iron 105, which it was a kg more than I needed to lose. I started at 70. I didn't want to go in heavy because I didn't want to run heavy. Because you're going to lose it all pretty quick in the first week or so if you're heavier than your normal. 68 is my normal. I got down to 67 at one point, and you can see my times dropped, which is correlated perfectly to that last kg lost. But I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, geez, I did it when I did the double brutal last year. I think I lost 4 kgs in those 2 days, whereas I only lost 3 kgs in 3.5 months. And yeah, so I did a lot of force feeding and that sort of thing. So yeah, having to not gravitate to drinking full fat cream instead of having a good meal, took a bit of getting used to. But
it's strange though, because when you've been eating a lot of food and your body, like, obviously it needs it for the fuel, but your appetite actually regulates to it. So I've found that, like, and I had this conversation with we had a client the other day that done they basically ran the length of Scotland over 10 days. So they ran like 53K a day, they averaged. And then we also had another client that just done their first Ironman. They done it in 11 hours. They flew around it, and they were doing, like, literally towards the end, like 15, 16, 17, 18-hour weeks consecutively. Yeah. And I spoke to both of them. I was like, how's your appetite been? They were like, yeah, hungry. Because it's like, even after that volume comes down, like, it's like, you just want to keep eating because you're just so used to it. Your body's just regulated this. So I thought that would be the case, definitely, with it. But I remember you actually eating the double cream. I remember seeing that. But I suppose it's like you need to get your nutrients in, then it does become a game of calories, doesn't it? Like,
you've got in the nutritional pie, you've got energy, recovery, and health. So most people in the endurance will almost entirely forget the health one, and just go full on energy. That's why everyone just eats gels, right? So there's zero health benefit to having gels, and almost zero recovery benefit. Not quite, because there is glycogen in there, glucose and whatever. But really, all you're fueling is the energy part of that nutritional pie. Whereas when you do something that goes months and months and months, I had to tick all 3 of those pie charts, really. So the energy and the recovery, I have enough experience on that. But the health side, I did get some advice from a nutritionist, Rebecca Dent, who just gave me a protocol for all the macros. So we had a whole series of vitamins in the morning, plus the AG1, that athletic green stuff. I had that, and then so what were my supplements from a vitamin point of view? I had vitamin D. I had a double dose of multivits, just general Optimum Nutrition that do a sort of a multivit pack. I also had the Optimum Nutrition fish oils. I had a couple of those. I've said vitamin D. Then I had the AG1s in a sort of a double dose of the athletic greens as well, just to make sure I got everything in me, all my macros. And then I had no gels basically, and very little sugar through the whole of Iron 105. All my food came from 3 categories, which was powder in the bottles, the full fat cream, or actual food I ate. And the actual food I ate came in 5 categories, which is meats, milks, nuts, fruit, and grain. I had very little veg in 105 days because once my times were okay and it was sustainable, I was like, right, whatever I'm doing now, don't change it, Sean. The system's sort of working. and the system didn't have any veg in. So I was like, right, well, that's just the way it is. I had some veg in the evening. So my blended meal in the evening was whatever the kids and Caroline were eating. So, that was usually something, like carbonara or spag bowl or whatever. So whatever that was, Caroline would just blend it up and I'd drink that in the evenings. So there was some veg in there.
Why did you blend it up?
Oh, just because I had eating fatigue
Yeah.
and I just couldn't be asked. So, whereas I can,
Blended up carbonara.
yeah, it's all right. To be honest, I quite like it now. Yeah, it's like soup, really. It's like soup,
Yeah, I suppose.
but I wouldn't have it with a spoon. It's too slow, and it just goes all over the beard. So I would put it in a shaker bottle, in like a protein shaker bottle, and have it quite watery. So Caroline would make the meal, and then probably just add a little bit extra water so it was drinkable. And then 750 mils during my physio and during my bath in the evening. I would just down that, and then that was another 800 calories, mostly around there. So I got 10% of my calories in the evening. And yeah, the system worked. So I was like, right, I have no space to introduce vegetables because I didn't even know when I would have the vegetables. Because in the morning it was
You
chia.
had your AG1, that's fine.
Yeah, I had my AG1, but in the morning it was chia and oats with honey, butter, and a banana. Then I had fruit on the side of the pool. Then during the bike, I'd usually eat like little meats and cheese, mostly just little cheeses. Then during I had 3 feed stops during the bike leg, and at the feed stop, I'd have a packet of crisps, banana, some fruit, maybe a tiny bit of milk, meat, but not a lot. And then I'd have like rice pudding and maybe some Welsh cakes, and I'd have those 3 times. So I was sort of like, where am I going to add veg? Like what? And then and what is it like? How am I having it? Like I'm having a bowl of. I think if I had to do it again, I'd probably have pre-made bowl of sort of fried veg in butter, like broccoli
Yeah.
and maybe some lentils, although that comes under grain anyway, doesn't it? Yeah, what would have had? Broccoli, tomatoes, probably some courgette. I'd probably have done some sort of stir fried veg
Yeah.
and had that warm. I would have, if I'd had that. That sort of maybe wasn't quite possible because the feed station was just like a bus stop in Holt. It had a
Yeah.
shelter over it, so that was great. So I just have it there. There was no sort of way to heat food up or anything easily. It could have been done, but
Do you know
yeah, if I
what's
did it again, I'd have that in.
the mad about this conversation? And I'm reminding myself of it right now, and to remind people like how candidly you're just talking about this, like in the sense that like obviously it's like your mindset with it, but like for anyone that's like never done an Ironman, I know like obviously the bike cycle in it in itself is 112 miles. I done my first Ironman in 2021, and I did my first ever 100-mile cycle in 2020 when I just got a bike. And
Yeah.
that in itself was overwhelmingly hard for me at the time. Like at just doing 100 miles, like because it's not just 100 miles, it's like that in itself. So it's funny when we dive into the intricacies and all these things, but you have to remind yourself the scale of this challenge, and it's overwhelming. But did you find, was there a point that like it just became normal? Was there a certain point that it just became like really, really like overwhelmed, settled down a little bit more, and it was just kind of like you were chipping away?
I was never overwhelmed by anything other. So when I sort of said to myself, right, I'm going to do 102 days of a full iron, that really didn't overwhelm me. Even the distances, like 2.4 miles, so yeah, I can do that. 112 miles, well, that's half what I was, nearly just over half what I was doing when I went for around the world record. And a marathon a day, really, that doesn't break me either. Like my run's good. Like I was really confident on the run from an injury. During COVID, I did the 496 challenge, and then just after I ran across Iceland, and so my run is good. It's the only thing that overwhelmed me is when I was at the beginning of April. So my wife's birthday is the beginning of August, and my birthday is the beginning of April. And when I started, I was like, I'm going to be doing this till nearly like a week before my wife's birthday. And I was like, oh my God, that's a long way away. So, in my head, I'm like, I'm doing all of April, the rest of April, most of April, basically, all of May, all of June, and most of July. That's the only thing where I was like, yeah, I'm just going to forget about the month side of this. I'm going to focus on the numbers because 102 didn't scare me at all. Um, so other than that, once I pushed that out my brain, yeah, nothing overwhelmed me at all. Actually, nothing. It was everything was a non-negotiable. Getting up each day, doing it, following the 10.5 pillars. I just made that my norm, and I'm quite good at that, and that comes with experience. So, yeah, really, nothing scared me. When I looked at all the data, looked at the power data, looked at heart rate
Madness.
data, looked at my marathon times, what they would need to be, looked at how much sleep I was getting. Like it was all like really in my head achievable. Um, you just have to tick a lot of boxes every single day to keep that up, right? So yeah, it was yeah, nothing really scared me at all, really. And I think I have to trick myself into that. I think you should be scared a little bit to make you train harder and be more prepared, so you don't become lazy or just complacent. However, you've got to go into it believing it's a done deal. I printed numbers up to 123, which I spent £300 more than I needed to on getting caps and numbers way over the 102
Yeah,
because I needed to manifest this idea that I was going to smash it.
love that.
I spent
Good.
all that money because it was £8 a cap or whatever and £3 a number from the printing company. I was like, no, it's fine. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to spend that money because that's a way of me going. It's a done
Like
deal, mate.
buying in. Yeah.
Done deal.
I had that conversation with a client the other day, and I was saying like when you invest into something financially, it's an easy way to actually motivate yourself. Like I know that like
100%.
it's
Yeah.
like it really, really is because you're like committed to it as well. And you mentioned before when you done the 102 and then the rehab after the first attempt at the 102, and then obviously the rehab after it, and like the just recovering after it after doing that seventh day. What was the recovery like off the back end of actually doing the 105 last year? Like you finish up, like what was the physiological and psychological recovery like?
Yeah, really interesting actually. Yeah, it was very different to everything else I've had. So psychologically, I was amazing. I was so motivated to keep the fitness level up, which was ridiculous now that I think about it. But I was sort of delusional because in my head, I was like, I've done 90 hours. So that the Iron 105 was 90 hours a week of exercise, pretty much consistently. It was amazing. So I was so consistent, which was again something I just was like, don't get excited, don't go too fast, don't go too slow, like just be consistent, Sean. In a whole week, I think the difference between a good week and a bad week was 2 hours for me,
Wow.
in the whole week. So like on a fast week, I was doing like, you know, 89 hours. And on a slow week, I was doing like 91 hours of exercise. So that's how the total time for each full iron was taking me over the whole week. So when I finished it, I was like, I did 90 hours a week of zone 2 training. Like, I'm never doing that again. So I want to capitalize on this. So I was like, right. So I signed up for loans. Honestly, I signed up for the Seven Peaks, Seven Valleys Ultra. It was 100K, 100K in the Lake District. I signed up for the tunnel, the 200 miler in the 1 mile tunnel. I signed up for the race across Scotland run, 215 mile. I signed up for I ran 105 miles to Carfest, where I was, appearing at Carfest. I signed up for the double brutal as well. So literally, I was like, right, I'm going to keep the fitness. I'm super motivated. Let's go. And then obviously my body was like, hell no, buddy. Like, so I
Yeah.
ran the 105 to Carfest, and I felt actually pretty good. So
Wow.
which is another benchmark I tell people. So when the next day after I ran that 105K and they're fully self-supported with a backpack and everything, I felt way better after that run than I did on every day of the full irons of Iron 105.
That's
Like,
mad.
yeah. So if someone said to me on that second day after running the 105K, run another 105K, I'd have been like, yeah, sweet, yeah, easy, yeah. I felt way better than after the full irons. Which gives you a level of the sort of the fatigue and the misery I had to deal with getting up every morning. But luckily, the swim fixes everything. So,
Yeah.
you know, if Ironman was the run first, no one would do multi. I think the record would be 10 at the moment. 700. It's something. So, uh, yeah, the body, yeah. So anyway, I did that, and then it just knocked me for like a month doing that run 105k. Then I did the double brutal, really struggled on. I just had no power on the hills.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I'd just done 12,000 miles of fairly flat riding during Iron 105. As soon as I hit the hills, my body was like, we do not have the muscles for this. So on the flats, I'll just pick random figures, but it was like 200 watts at 130 heart rate. When I got to the hills, to keep 200 watts on the hills, my heart rate would go up to like 160.
Wow.
So for the same heart rate, once I hit the hills, my power was way down because you're using slightly different muscles and they're not as efficient, right? So yeah, so I struggled, and then again that knocked me for another month or so. So and during those fatigue months where I pushed it, I shouldn't have pushed it really. Yeah, I just was sleeping 12 hours a night. Just really tired, sleepy tired.
Yeah.
Muscularly, I felt okay. My power was okay. Like I jump on the watt bike and I was okay. And I got on the time trial bike once, and I went and I got a couple of KOMs around me, quite famous ones as well, where there's got like 2,000 or 3,000 people who've attempted it, and I got number one. That's so like my power was still good for little sprints of like 30 seconds or whatever. But yeah, it would just knock me. But the hardest thing was like I had this brain fog, just this immense blanket over my brain, and Caroline would ask me very simple questions like, what would you like for dinner, Sean? And I'd be like, I just couldn't think. I went to start writing Iron 105 every day for 6 months, pretty much. I'd open my laptop and I had first page, which was Iron 105 by Sean Conway, page 1, page 2, prologue. Like just nothing came out of my brain, like absolutely nothing. So yeah, with a lot of sleep, really, that sort of has gotten better. And I'd say 80% there, really, 90% back on the brain side. I still feel I'm not fully there. There's some morning, especially in the afternoons, and I don't think it's diet. I'm eating quite well. I'm drinking, hydration's quite well. I don't drink a lot of alcohol, so but yeah, by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm poked, man. So
Yeah.
not every day, but more days than I'd like to than it needs to be at the moment. And I do have 2 young kids, so
Yeah.
sleep's pretty restless anyway, and stuff like that. But yeah, that's been the biggest challenge, is just that brain fog, really.
I think when you do something like that, you're emptying your endocrine system, like your hormones, like to a level that like not
Yeah.
only are you taxing your muscles, like your organs, like
Mm.
you're literally like you're almost like bypassing parts that have like never been done before. Do you know what I mean? Like you're going into places and almost like squeezing dry like certain hormones. It's gonna take a
Yeah.
while to recover, a long, long time. So
Yeah, and it's weird though because mentally I feel motivated. So, for example, I have lots of ideas about various different things about my work within youth sport. There's a specific website I want to create to help kids in sport. So I have loads of ideas, but trying to apply them and trying to make them happen. And I don't know if it's PTSD, if my brain is just associating me taking on another challenge, whether it will be something simple like building the website or writing the book. They take a lot of
yeah,
energy
yeah.
and effort. I wonder if my body's just associating this as like it thinks I'm doing
Trauma.
another thing. So it's just going, well, just don't do it. So, even the website, I'm like, I can do this website. Like it's from a building a website point of view with all the available sort of like, designing, like Weebly and WordPress is pretty simple. But literally every time I go to do it, my body's just like, no, just don't do this to me, man. Like, and I'm like, but I want to do it. So,
Yeah.
and it's putting barriers in place like it did with the book. Luckily, I managed to unlock the creative side. So I'm back on writing, and I've got a couple of books. I've got 3 or 4 books that I've been writing for 10 years now. So I'm chipping away at those, and I'm finding that very rewarding. But anything else, like putting together, I've got a couple of little mini projects I want to do from a physical point of view. And every time I go to try and plan them, my body just is like, nah, buddy, please don't do this to us. So yeah, it's been interesting. And I don't know how every time I do, someone asks me like, oh, so, have you recovered? And when are you going to recover? For the last 6 months, I've been saying, oh, hopefully in a couple of weeks. So I keep saying hopefully a couple of weeks, but it seems to have not not come back fully yet. And but I'm okay with that, to be honest. I'm okay with it. I'd rather chase very difficult things and succeed in them and deal with the ramifications than not chase them at all. So
Yeah, it's the nature of the beast when you play about with stuff like this, isn't it?
yeah.
But yeah, mate, just to kind of like honestly, I really, really appreciate your time, Sean, and I really value obviously coming on the podcast as well and chatting and sharing your experiences. It will be hugely beneficial, and I just wanted to say thanks as well. It's awesome to have you on. It's good to chat to you as well. It's good for me. I learn a lot as well, man, which is amazing. I think just being in people's presence, like you don't even learn through what people say, how they say it, what they say. Like it teaches you a lot, man. So I really, really appreciate it as well. But just before we round things off, I was kind of like finishing off on like one question. Like I think with a guy like yourself, a lot of wisdom and a lot of life experience and done a lot of different things. Like, what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Um, it's a difficult one because I think any advice I gave him would have changed the trajectory and made me not do what I do now, because all the stuff where I maybe should have got advice and I didn't get advice made me question and push harder. And if had I had help in anything earlier on, I probably wouldn't have had the drive and the passion to do what I do now. That said, I wish I'd just tried more stuff when I was in my 20s. And I wish I'd done more physical activity in my 20s. I did nothing.
Yeah.
Almost pretty. I did cycle Land's End John O'Groats in 25 days when I was 28, but I didn't own a pair of trainers. I did nothing in my 20s. And yeah, I think if I'd gone back to I did a lot at school, and I wasn't very good, but I was active at school. Yeah, I would have said to myself, like, just spend more time just doing stuff, because and without wanting to win, because I think I do have that tendency in me, because the thing that kicked it off really was after I cycled Lands into John O'Groats, when the photography was pretty miserable and I was hating it. I did the Gloucestershire cheese rolling, and two things happened. I got a bump on the head, and I came second.
Yeah.
I didn't win. And I remember I was so adamant I was going to win the 2009 Gloucestershire cheese rolling. I've got the certificate somewhere. I was so adamant I was going to win. I was like, man, I've got this. I'm going to freaking sprint. I'm going to fall down that hill faster than anyone's fallen down that hill ever. And I didn't. I came second, and that feeling of not winning really fueled me. That really fueled me. So yeah, I've obviously always had this tendency to try and be the best at something, and that has the downside of that is if there's something I know I might not win at, I tend to sometimes not try at it, and that's not good. That's not healthy. I think you should just do stuff to try, because you never know what you might be good at.
Yeah.
And it's half the reason I didn't do sport at school. I wasn't very good at sport at school, so I was always like in the lowest team of everything. And that's probably why I didn't do it in my 20s. So I thought, well, I'm rubbish at it, so I might as well not try. And then I was wrong. I should have just tried. Because who knows? Had I, what could I? It's hard to say, because
You don't
I'm
know.
very
Yeah.
proud of all. I've done quite a lot, to be fair.
Yeah.
I can't be too hard on myself there. However, I am 43, and if I could magically, give myself another 10 years, I would do that 100%. I love what I do. I love being miserable and cold and wet and hungry. I'm quite good at it, and I do enjoy it in hindsight. So yeah, I maybe wish I'd done a little bit more, tried a little bit more stuff in my 20s without the pressure of maybe trying to be good at it.
I think that's amazing advice, and I think it's good advice as well because it gives people a lot of hope as well to see that like you literally, as you said, that it wasn't until your late 20s, like you actually didn't really start. Like obviously, I know you done that when you were 28, but then it wasn't until 2 years later, 3 years later, until you actually started going, no, I'm going to take this more seriously.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people think things have passed by and they don't realize like I think people overestimate what they can do in 3 months, but underestimate what they can do in 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Play the long game, everyone.
Yeah,
So much
definitely.
more rewarding.
It definitely is. But Sean, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. That was awesome. Learned so much today, and I obviously learned a lot about you as well. And it was great to chat as well. Before I kind of close things off, can you plug away, mate, like for your book, your website, where people can find you on socials? That'd be great.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm the Iron 105 book's out. It's I'm very proud of that. It's a good book. It's on Audible, paperback, hardback, all that sort of thing. So yeah, just it's yeah. I'm just glad it's done now. From a as in Iron 105. I'm glad I don't have to do multiple full irons anymore. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice to close the chapter on that period of my life with the book, because yeah, I have this amazing sort of future scenario where one of my kids decides to do their first Ironman when they're like
Yeah.
20 or whatever, and they come back broken, and then I just slide this under their bedroom door and be like, yeah, just read this 105 book, by the way. And then you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, shut up, Dad, the record's 500 now by that Kiwi guy or whatever. So, yeah.
No, awesome, mate. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you took a lot away from it. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a review, leave your rating. That'd be absolutely awesome. Anyway, guys, catch you in a wee bit. See you later. Goodbye.